Danielle Milan had picked the wrong shoes. The heels she wore were sleek, stylish, and agonizing. She thought this would be a quick meeting. A firm handshake, confident eye contact, 30 minutes of proving herself, and a hopeful ride back home. She hadn't counted on waiting, and she certainly hadn't counted on being forgotten. She arrived early, as always. 15 minutes ahead of schedule, standing just inside the wide glass entrance of the Westbridge Corporate Plaza in Scottsdale. The building shimmered with polished prestige, the kind that whispers success in every corner. Danielle clutched her portfolio, each page neatly arranged, every answer rehearsed and polished. She'd spent the last 2 weeks preparing. She had studied Craig Ellison's career path, practiced mock interviews, even rehearsed responses in front of her bathroom mirror. Her nerves hummed underneath her confidence, but she was ready. The lobby welcomed her with cool air and a faint scent of citrus polish. A massive modern sculpture loomed beside the elevators, and the floor glistened like water. At the front desk, a young receptionist snapped her gum softly and tapped at her keyboard with brightly colored nails. "I'm Danielle Milan," she said, offering a professional smile. "I have a 10 a.m. meeting with Mr. Ellison." After a quick phone call, the receptionist nodded. "He'll be with you shortly. You can take a seat." Danielle thanked her, took a seat near the window, crossed her legs neatly, and rested her portfolio on her lap. At first, she wasn't concerned. When 10 minutes passed without movement, important people get tied up. Calls run long. She refreshed her phone, reviewed her notes again. A mantra repeated in her mind. "You earned this. You belong here. Breathe." By the time half an hour had passed, Danielle's confidence had softened at the edges. She returned to the desk, her voice pleasant. "Just checking in. Any update on Mr. Ellison?" "He's finishing a call," the receptionist replied, voice bland, smile forced. "He'll be right with you." Danielle nodded, returned to her seat, and straightened her blazer again. She noticed 2 men arrive, white, mid-40s, business casual confidence. The receptionist jumped to attention, offered coffee, and escorted them inside with warm familiarity. Danielle watched quietly, her expression still. Maybe they were expected. Maybe they weren't. Either way, the difference in how they were treated tightened something inside her. The minutes continued to tick by, slow and heavy. No one looked her way. No one offered an update. Danielle began to feel less like a guest, and more like a misplaced fixture. She didn't fidget. She didn't scroll her phone. She sat upright, her face composed, even as her back ached against the stiff seat. A janitor passed by, pushing a cart. Older man, gray streaks in his hair, faded baseball cap. They shared a brief glance. His eyes met hers without judgment, without urgency, just recognition. She gave him a small nod, grateful for that tiny thread of humanity. Another 30 minutes slipped away. A tall woman swept through the doors, navy pantsuit, confident stride. Danielle recognized her instantly. Avery Lindstrom, VP of Operations. She moved like she belonged in every room. The receptionist offered a flurry of greetings and questions. Coffee? Water? Avery declined and headed for the elevator. Danielle sat a little straighter, wondering if she should stand, should somehow reassert her presence. But she didn't. She stayed still, composed. Again, she approached the desk. "Hi, I just want to check. Should I reschedule?" "It's been a while." The receptionist looked up, surprised. "Oh, he's still on a call. He'll be out soon." Same line, same smile, same dismissal. Danielle felt her throat tighten, not with tears, she refused to cry, but with a rising burn of something harder to contain. She returned to her chair and sat perfectly still, ignoring the ache in her legs, the growing exhaustion behind her eyes. Time dragged its feet. The conversations around her continued, none of them touching her. Danielle watched as people came and went. She wasn't being overlooked. She was being deliberately unacknowledged, invisible in plain sight. The longer she sat there, the more convinced she became that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was something else. She opened her portfolio. Again. Not to study. She knew every word by heart now. She needed something to do with her hands, somewhere to bury the storm building inside. At nearly noon, she spotted him. Craig Ellison, crisp shirt, trim beard, easy laughter as he exited a back office. He didn't glance her way. His eyes scanned the lobby, passed right over her like she was part of the furniture. He turned and disappeared behind another door, still mid-conversation. Danielle stared at the door he vanished into. There it was, the moment she knew. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't bad luck. It was the deliberate erasure of someone they had no intention of taking seriously. Still, she didn't leave. Walking out would feel like giving up. And Danielle didn't do that. She thought of her mother. "You've got to work twice as hard just to get half as far," she used to say. As a kid, Danielle had rolled her eyes. Now she understood. The receptionist laughed at something the delivery guy said. Two men clinked coffee cups and disappeared into the elevator. The world moved. Danielle remained still. Then, a shift. The lobby doors opened. A new presence entered. No, a new force. 5 sharply dressed executives strode in, each radiating importance without saying a word. The lobby paused. The receptionist straightened her spine. Danielle recognized 2 immediately, Martin Beasley, the CEO, and Sandra Whitlock, Senior Director of Finance. These were decision-makers, leaders, the kind of people who didn't have to wait in lobbies. Before Danielle could rise, Sandra spotted her. "Danielle Mlan?" she said, smiling broadly. Her voice cut across the lobby like a bell. "I didn't realize you'd be here today." Every conversation stopped. Craig Ellison reappeared, eyes wide. Suddenly, all eyes were on Danielle. She stood slowly with purpose, collected, poised, portfolio under her arm, shoulders squared. Martin approached first. "It's good to see you again," he said, extending a hand. "We were just talking about your Leadership Summit presentation. Stellar work." Danielle shook his hand, her expression calm. "Thank you, Mr. Beasley. I appreciate that." Behind them, Craig's jaw visibly tensed. He rushed over, suddenly all apologies. "I'm so sorry for the delay. We had unexpected issues this morning," he stammered. "Totally unacceptable. I take full responsibility." Danielle turned to him, her face polite but unreadable. "2 hours is quite a wait, Mr. Ellison," she replied, her voice steady. Craig stuttered an excuse. Nobody really listened. Sandra placed a hand gently on Danielle's arm. "If you're available, we'd love to bring you up to the executive conference room. There are a few projects we'd like your input on." Danielle gave a soft nod. Of course, I'd be glad to." As they moved toward the elevators, Craig offered coffee, assistance, anything to make up for what had already been laid bare. Danielle didn't respond. She walked between Sandra and Martin, steady and sure. They entered the conference room, and everything shifted. The tension fell away. She wasn't waiting anymore. She wasn't invisible. Now, the room waited for her. Martin opened a folder and slid it across the table. "We're building a new leadership initiative," he said. "After seeing what you're capable of, we'd like you involved." Inside the sleek glass walls of the executive conference room, Danielle sat at the head of the polished table with a folder open in front of her. The contents weren't just a set of talking points. They were blueprints, detailed project outlines, initial budget approvals. It wasn't a request for input. It was an invitation to lead. Across from her, Sandra leaned in with the kind of poise that only comes from years of navigating boardrooms and balancing egos. "We need more eyes like yours," she said. People who spot what's missing before. Others even notice something's off. People who know how to lead without leaving bruises behind. Her voice was low, but there was steel in it. Danielle sat straighter, flipping through the documents not out of surprise, but preparation. She asked specific, confident questions about scope, implementation timelines, and cross-departmental buy-in. Sandra answered with clarity and respect, as did Martin, who chimed in with thoughts about long-term impact and future expansion. And they listened. Not the performative nodding kind, but the kind where pens paused mid-note, eyes stayed locked, and opinions shifted in real time. Danielle wasn't just present, she was leading the direction of the room. Outside the conference room, through the transparent glass wall, Craig Ellison lingered near his office door like a misplaced prop. His earlier swagger had been reduced to cautious glances. He paced, fidgeted with his tie, and peeked toward the room that had suddenly become the center of gravity. His mouth twitched when he saw Danielle, like he might wave or smile, but she met his gaze without expression. There was no anger on her face, no satisfaction either, just a calm, collected presence that made it very clear who held the power now. When the meeting wrapped, Martin stood first. "Take your time deciding," he said with a knowing nod. "But I think we both know you'd be the right person for this." Danielle shook his hand, professional and firm. "I appreciate the opportunity. I'll give it serious thought." As she gathered her things, Sandra joined her near the elevator. "If there's ever anything, any issue at all, skip the channels. Come straight to me," she said lightly but deliberately. "We've seen what happens when the wrong people get too comfortable." Danielle gave a small smile. Not the polite kind she had mastered in so many waiting rooms, but one that was quiet and real. "Thank you," she said. "I'll remember that." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. As Danielle stepped inside, Craig was standing nearby, pretending to flip through a folder he clearly wasn't reading. The way he kept glancing over, not quite meeting her eyes, told Danielle everything she needed to know. He wasn't wondering what happened. He already knew. What Danielle didn't know, not yet at least, was that this moment was only the spark. That what started in a quiet boardroom would ripple through the company far beyond a promotion. A week later, she received her official offer. The leadership initiative wasn't just a temporary program or an empty title. It was a stepping stone to a regional executive position, with real authority, higher compensation, and influence over hiring practices and team structures. Danielle accepted, not as a gesture of retaliation, but because she had earned it. The long nights, the ignored pitches, the time spent being underestimated, all of it added up to this moment. The same morning her promotion was announced across the company, Craig was called into a closed-door meeting on the executive floor. Whispers spread quickly, quicker than emails ever could. There were no memos, no official statements, just nods and silent acknowledgements. People had noticed the pattern, the overlooked candidates, the late meetings, the gatekeeping dressed up as corporate structure. It hadn't just been Danielle. It had been a series of moments that finally added up. By Friday afternoon, his office door was bare. Danielle didn't celebrate. She didn't speak on it. She simply moved forward, focused and deliberate. Her first meeting as department lead was filled to capacity. Project managers, interns, department heads, even some curious folks from other divisions. She wore a clean white blouse and a soft gray skirt. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. "Good ideas don't care where they come from," she said evenly. "Neither should we." Heads nodded, pens scribbled. People leaned forward, not out of obligation but out of interest. Because something had shifted, not just in title, but in tone. Danielle had become more than a name on a meeting list. She had become the example. Her story wasn't about payback. It wasn't even about proving something. It was about honoring. That unspoken promise she had made to herself in the quiet humiliation of that lobby. to never let herself be defined by how others chose to see her. To never shrink just to fit, and for every young woman stepping into rooms where they might be overlooked, Danielle was already holding the door open wider. Because being seen should never depend on being recognized first. Sometimes, you just have to make sure the room can't look away.